I have a family friend who bought this house a few years ago and it needed some repair work done. You can see all these visible lines which are evidence of leaks coming from the roof that caused this damage. We also ran into some other issues, one being this hole that's cut in the wall down near the floor that you can see there. As best I could tell when I first looked at it, it was due to the fact that a stud had bowed somewhat and was sticking out about a half an inch at the bottom of the wall and pushing the sheetrock away from the bottom plate. That caused a gap there. Mice found the gap in the sheetrock and moved in to set up housekeeping in the wall. Someone who cut this hole was pretty surprised, I'm sure, by what they may have encountered. So we'll fix all of this and show you the process to make the garage look like this again. I'll show you a variety of ways to repair, tape, and texture walls with sheetrock damage that can be applied in any circumstances you run into in your own home.
Main thing to keep in mind here is just to knock off the loose stuff first of all. This is just one of those things that it looks bad and it's damage that's easily repaired. So if you have things like this happening in a garage or have damage in your home, it's really not that difficult to repair if you just kind of follow a few basic processes. Now, for some reason, somebody along the way went ahead and notched the sheetrock here, and it was probably to see what was causing the wall to bow. Not sure if this was originally bowed when the sheetrock was initially installed, or if over time it's a 2x6 stud that's in this wall. If it bowed because it got wet, there you can see there is little water damage that has occurred here, so it's possible that it just bowed when the water hit it over time. But it kind of feels like it comes up several feet. So what we'll do to address this is actually cut the sheetrock away and shave off that stud to give us a flat wall again. What I'm going to do is just draw some lines, plumb lines going up the wall a bit so I can remove a piece of sheetrock. I'm just drawing in the center of one of the studs, so then we'll have backing for the new sheetrock piece that'll go back in after we have shaved off the bowed stud. So mark this. So hopefully these lines will be somewhere in the area of the center of the studs, and if not, it's not that big a deal. One thing to remember when cutting into sheetrock with a tool like this is in this case, this is in the garage, so the sheetrock's 5/8 inch thick, and you're okay to cut, 5/8 inch deep. If you go deeper, you need to make sure you know what's behind the wall and the space between the studs before you do that. So that's just a simple rule of thumb. You're never going to be in trouble if you're only cutting the depth of the sheetrock. Mice actually did get into the wall here and got into the insulation pretty well, so kind of nasty. grab a mask. All right, so now you can see where the mice actually came up underneath the sheetrock and started chewing a hole through the insulation and getting to the back of the wall there. So that's kind of a nasty deal. Here's the results. So this is northern New Mexico, and we are known for having a lot of mice. And when they get an opportunity to get into an enclosed warm space in the summertime, in the wintertime or summertime as well, they will do a lot of nasty, damaging things. So it's good to get this fixed. So this all came about because this stud right there bowed out and potentially was never addressed before it was sheetrocked, and that gave the mice enough space to get up underneath and pretty much go unnoticed without damaging the outside of the sheetrock. So probably why this happened. Gives you an idea as to how far this stud is actually out here. And it's about, it's a ½ inch. So now I can just take my level and lay it across the wall here and get a good idea. See, we're down to about 3/8 of an inch or so from the sheetrock to the level when it's laid flat against the other corresponding sheetrock pieces. So anyway, and then as we move up the wall, we're up to almost to the full 5/8, about there. So basically at this point here, we're safe to just trim this stud off flush with the bottom plate up to that point, and that will allow the sheetrock then to rest back against the bottom plate again. So now I've just taken my level and laid it against the plate, against the sheetrock up here, and then just scribed a line on the stud. That will give us our cut line to straighten this back up again. I'm going to go ahead and trim off some of the old texture, and basically to make a space for my new tape to go in. So I'll just strip off some of the sheetrock here. The goal of this repair is to be able to not see that we ever did a repair in the first place. So one way that I try to hedge my bets when I'm doing something like this is to go ahead and cut away the paper and the texture where I'm going to put new tape on the joints as I'm starting to mud the wall itself. So just removing this paper on the sheetrock allows the new tape to actually be set in a little closer to the flushed out finish of the textured wall that will be matching here in the process. So alright, so now I'm ready to start adding back new tape and mud put a thin coat on just to get this initial set going on this repair. I like to take a box of the pre-mixed mud and go ahead and dump it into a 5-gallon bucket. Makes for a nice, kind of convenient way to always have mud available. You can throw a little water on it and then dig down deeper to some thicker stuff, and you can kind of mix the consistency of the mud that you need for any particular purpose with this process. So that's just about right for setting my tape on my joints. You can use a blade and a mud pan like this. Certainly one methodology. And all I'm doing is just putting a thin coat of mud on to embed my tape in. Hole there that I'll fill. And then literally just set my tape in the mud. And just sort of press it in place. And come back with the blade. Come back with the blade and just pull down across the tape sort of the middle to get excess mud out from underneath it. Okay, and that's a pretty good set right there. So you can see my tape is really close to the level of the texture already, so this is a good idea what I did. So I've got a little bit of working room to build this out just a little without making it too obvious in the wall. Here's another method for applying mud that's my preference. And that's using a hawk and a trowel. This is a small hawk, kind of used for plaster application and those types of products. And then a small Venetian plaster trowel. For some reason it seems to work better for me. Just feels better in my hand when I'm taping joints. All right, so the initial coat of mud is set up and dried, and so now it's going to knock off any high points, anything that's kind of sticking up, and then I'll take a sanding block real quick and just sand lightly, primarily trying to get rid of any high points in these areas that are already textured. So, because the blade tends to hit those high points and it gives you these little ripples, as you can see, and we don't want this the next time around. And the next coat of mud will go on a lot easier because you have a dry coat already underneath the new stuff that's going on. So it'll be setting up quicker. Give us the opportunity to really make this a lot smoother looking than this initial coat. All right, here we go. I'll actually just go ahead and mud over the top of this old texture as well, since we'll be spraying new texture on anyway. A little easier just to spray new over everything, float over everything, and we don't have to deal with blending old into new quite so much. This lower section will take one more pass of mud after this is dry, just because it's going to be a little thicker. Since I'm a lefty, I like to work from top left to bottom right when I'm doing stuff like this. Because then I can sort of pull back into the stuff that's drying, and it tends to let you have a little smoother end to your pass. It saves sanding, touching up later on when you can do it this way. Then because this new mud is going over the old coat and it's drying it out quicker, I can almost get, perfectly smooth pull with my trowel across it as it's drying. There's sort of this point between it being a little too wet to have it happen and getting too dry where you're going to start pulling it off again. And it's just about the point now where I can get a real smooth pull. So makes just quick sanding block on this, and it's ready for texture after it's dried. So that's why I'm just a believer in kind of thin coats as you sort of build this stuff back. Because it's just easier to work with. Feel a little thicker coat right here on the bottom, and just leave it to dry a touch, and then we'll sand it right before we spray texture. All All right, just a light sanding of that when it's dry, and it'll, of course, around the edges blend this in with the old texture, and then it'll be ready to spray new stuff on. And now it's the same routine for areas like this as well. Just going to run a thin layer of mud in the area where the tape joint used to be, and then we'll set new tape. There are basically two reasons why repairs like this will show up after they're completed. One is that when the mud is being applied, you actually build out too much so that it casts a shadow on surrounding areas when light hits it in certain ways. Second reason is that you don't get a good match on the texture, and you may put it on heavier than it needs to be, and therefore it'll show for the same reason as before, cast shadows when the light hits it in certain ways. In this case, we have an orange peel texture on the wall, which is pretty easy to match. And so the rule of thumb for me is always, though, to just go lighter than you think you need to. You can always add back more if you need a little bit more, but less is better in this case. So what will definitely show is if you have too heavy a texture on, it will definitely show up. If it's lighter than it needs to be, it's a lot less likely to even be noticed. I'm going to spray this texture with a hopper rather than using the cans that you can buy from Lowe's or Home Depot. And those cans work fine. For me, I just get better control and better results when I use real mud and use the hopper to spray with. I can just get a closer match just with the adjustments that you have on this. I've had this for, I think, 35 years, closing in on 40 probably. It just hooks up to an air compressor, and you put mud in the top here, and then you have various adjustments here for the amount of mud that you want to be able to spray or splatter at one time, going from very small to a very large distribution of material. And then, as I said, it just hooks to an air compressor, and I spray with about 40 pounds of pressure on the line. I'll mix my mud here in a second too, and all I do is take regular joint compound and just thin it down to where I get it to flow out about the consistency that I want it to flow to give me the kind of textured effect that I want to see. All right, I'm going to spray just a little test pattern over here to the left of my new stuff. I basically know what my setup is already because I use this probably 90% of the time when I spray. It matches real close to most things I run into these days. So at any rate, when I plug this in, it's going to make some noise as the air is coming through, and we'll start spraying. It's not going to take long to do. Just taking my block and knocking off just the high points on the texture real lightly. Ready to go. It's a good idea when you're repairing something like this to go ahead and use a product like Kills, a stain blocker, which allows the new sheetrock and new texture to not have old water stains bleeding back through the back and causing you problems with your new paint job. So I'm putting this on, and then the homeowner is going to go ahead and do the final coat of new paint on the new texture.